film which you are about to see is an account of the tragedy which befell a group of 5 youths, in particular, Sally Hardesty and her invalid brother, Franklin. It is all the more tragic in that they were young. But had they lived very, very long lives, they could not have expected, nor would they have wished to see as much of the mad and macabre as they were to see that day. For them, an idyllic summer afternoon drive became a nightmare. The events of that day were to lead to the discovery of one of the most bizarre crimes in the annals of American history, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
The pod bay doors are open. Welcome once again. I'm your host, Jerry Dean Roberts of ArmchairCinema.com. Seated here with a man who's going to tell me what all the buzz is about, the critic, dare I say legend, from TalkMovieToMe.com, the one and only Mr. Doug Heller. How the heck are you today, sir?
Sally! Sally! Are you there? Sally!
That's actually not the line that gets me. It's the 4 or 5 minutes that he and Sally, Jerry!
Kirk! We're talking about the 1974 original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
This is our third go around in Shock-Tober 2024.
Yes.
This is my pick.
Yeah.
50th anniversary.
Because for many, many years, I saw this a long, long time ago. A minimum of 20 years.
I did too.
The first time I saw it. Probably longer ago than that at this point. Probably closer to 25 years. I think I saw it sometime in college or late high school. And I appreciated what it meant to hit film history, but I didn't like it, and I vowed to never watch it again. And you have made me break that vow.
You are not the only one I've ever heard say that. You're not the only one I've ever heard say that.
You made me break that vow. And consequently, I am now more willing to rewatch this at some point further down the road than I ever was before.
Well, I'm going to make a confession. This was my pick. This is my second pick for Shocktober 2024. And I saw it years and years ago, and I'm going to make a confession. Until recording this for this show, I had never actually seen the back half of this movie.
And you're telling me that everything is just ethereal and everything. Yeah, no, it's not.
The scene that and it wasn't because I was scared or I couldn't handle it or anything like that. What it was is it was one of those things where I sat down to watch the movie and then had something to do or something came up or I got a phone call or whatever and I stopped and I just never went back to it. And I went back and I watched it I've watched it a couple of times. The furthest I've gotten into the movie, the point where I stopped, was that scene where Sally and Franklin are sitting by the van at night, and they're screaming my name over and over again.
The single most annoying part of the movie, featuring the single most annoying character, possibly in film history.
I listened to the commentary, and Toby Hooper alluded to the fact that he said, I don't know if this actor was a method actor or if he really was genuinely a pain in the ass, but he said he was literally like that the whole shoot. He said, I don't know if he was just really this really intense method actor, or if he's just really like that.
I'm gonna go with he's really like that because I don't think there's any intense actors in this movie.
Not really.
The movie is only 83 minutes long and you were never able to finish it is kind of remarkable.
But it wasn't because I couldn't handle it. It was just life got in the way.
So the first time I saw it, I think I was just too young to really I was too young and too used to contemporary movies at the time, even though I was definitely well into my film studies journey. I was
kind of seeing every movie of note.
Right, and this
because I went through that too.
Back in the early days and just kind of watching everything I could. and I don't think I paid that much attention to it. And then I'll tell you what, Franklin just annoyed the piss out of me. I think that was the largest quibble that I had about the movie, is I could not stand Franklin. And up until the part that they actually get to the grandfather's house, I thought I was wrong, because I'm watching and I'm like, okay, I'm not as annoyed by him here. Okay. And then as soon as they get out of the van and everybody basically just abandons the guy in the wheelchair to fend for himself on unpaved terrain in a dilapidated house, that's when he starts to whine. And although he was perfectly justified in his whining at that point, it was still ridiculously annoying. And they could not kill him fast enough, and it took way too long to get there for me.
And he's the last one of them to go.
Die, and the penultimate one to get attacked.
Not the last character to die, but the last one of the group to go. But it's funny because the first time I saw this, the word that kept floating around in my mind was nausea. Because the very first...
Go ahead.
But I'll tell you this, the weird thing about this movie, and one of the reasons, because we were saying off mic, this is not a valueless movie at all. And the thing that I noticed is that, because I saw this movie twice in preparation for this, because if you're really paying attention, or even if you're not really paying attention, you notice stuff that is coming. Like the second time that I saw this all the way through was when I realized that the hitchhiker was taking the pictures at the beginning. The flashbulb that's going off.
Oh yeah.
You hear the grave being dug up, and then you got all the flashbulbs. It took me a while to figure out that was the hitchhiker, and that he was the one messing around in the graveyard. Because later on, his brother is giving him a thrashing for doing that. And little things.
His father.
I think it's his brother. You never know.
What I got from is that there's feeble, creepy grandpa.
137 years old.
Right. Then there's the guy that was at the gas station, who is his child. Who
might be the scariest one of the bunch, because he's the one you think he's a nice guy because you see him at the beginning.
Nice guy because it's just a creepy situation all the way around.
Well, she runs into him later on when she's running away from Leatherface, and you think he's going to be the one to help her and to help him out, to help her out.
As much a part of it as anything.
Right.
So I think he and Leatherface are brothers, and that the other one was, I thought maybe it was his kid. Maybe it is another. Maybe just the father is gone and the grandfather.
Or maybe they're all drifters. Or maybe they're all brothers.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. But they call him Grandpa. So
I
would assume that there was a father, but there's obviously no mothers there.
Can I say this movie is a compendium of every dull-witted, dim-witted mistake people make in horror movies.
First of all,
don't pick up a hitchhiker.
Yes,
especially when you don't know where you are.
If Ida Lupino teaches me anything, it's don't pick up a hitchhiker. Okay, yeah. I've seen that movie.
In particular, don't pick up this hitchhiker.
Say, don't pick him up. He's creepy looking. We don't know what he's gonna do. And then they're like, okay, so riddle me this, Batman. Why? After they're so horrified that this guy cuts his palm open with Franklin's dull Boy Scout knife. Yeah, I'm not.
And lights a fire.
He cuts his hand, gives the knife back to Franklin, who takes it, sits there horrified. 5 minutes later, after they finally kick him out, he's digging at his nails with it again. And then he goes, do you think this is blood? Do you think this is his blood?
They pick up this creepo off the street. He starts jabbering. He starts cutting his hand with the knife. Then he lights a fire. And they kick him out. And immediately, the very next shot is Pam doing somebody's horoscope.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I would need a minute. I would need a minute.
that yes, there were many things that needed to be processed that never were. The
Yeah.
fact that I didn't see him wipe off the knife
Mhm.
before he started digging into his nails with it, the fact that he could then get himself, I don't know, poisoned with whatever this guy has, if he's, whatever diseases this guy might have, he's just
Mhm.
opening himself up to it, and then curious, gee, is this blood on the knife that that the guy cut himself open with? Gee, I don't know, Franklin. Is it blood?
Let's look at where they are. Okay, they're in rural, overgrown, grassy backwoods Texas, where everything that you touch will
Right, right,
require a
right.
tetanus
And I
shot.
think it's,
And they're in a van
yeah,
that looks like everything you touch, you would need a tetanus shot.
somewhere in East Texas that just the fact that people live there is upsetting. It,
Yeah,
like
but
yeah.
but look at it this way: if you're living in this area that's farmland, overgrown, rusty, filthy, everything's dirty all the time. If that's
You
all
live in
you've ever known,
Philadelphia.
then these are the circumstances you live in. I mean, if these are the people that you know, and
Sorry, Philadelphia.
sorry, Philly. But as they're driving along, and one thing that I noticed is, of course, this movie is 1974, the early 70s. And one of the things that's important to note about this movie is you get the feeling these kids came out of that hippie
Yeah,
period.
like these
Come on,
these
people, now smile on your brother.
yeah,
Everybody get
these
together. Try to
kids
love one
are
another.
like early 20s,
Hmm.
like maybe early to mid 20s. I'd say they're probably close to like Friends age.
Hmm. They're in that hippie hangover.
Right. So they definitely were all part of that at the end of the
They
decade.
were
Right.
teenagers in it.
So they were the perfect age to be going through all of that. Unfortunately,
Right.
it was also the worst age to come out of it.
Hmm.
Be that old and then have to face the world. That's where yuppies came from. That's why we
Yeah.
got Reagan. Like there's a
Hmm.
whole like a line that's just of ruination from that. But
But this nausea that comes from this atmosphere, there's something from the very beginning, there is something unsettling here. There's something nasty and dirty and sickening. It's 114 degrees outside,
yeah.
and everything's dead or everything's dying. There's terrible things happening.
Hmm.
They go to that. What was it? Was it a picnic they stopped by? And there's a man on the ground who is drunk and he's babbling.
I don't think it was
And
a picnic. I think that they were the employees of the graveyard or just hanging out with with the drunkard sheriff.
yeah, can I take a side road here? Because I need to tell you something about this. Have you ever heard of a man
Yes,
named John
but I
Henry
don't know
Falk?
why.
John Henry Falk was in the, and this is my side road, he was a radio personality and a storyteller, kind of a Will
Okay.
Rogers type, with a very, very astute observational mind of the political structure.
Hmm.
And he was from Texas, had a very pronounced Texas twang, but his language was very flowery. He spoke out during the HUAC era on political means, dirty politics, things that the House Un-American
Hmm.
Activities Commission was doing, and there were radio entities and people basically trying to destroy him and defame
Hmm.
him in the press. He took one agency to court and won, and it was one of the first cracks
Hmm.
in the McCarthy era. Now, the reason I bring all this up is
Oh.
because he's in the movie. There's a guy who is sitting, he's telling stories when they
Hmm.
go to that cemetery. He's this kindly old man in a straw hat, and he says, "See that fella over there? You follow him, he'll tell you where your granddad
Okay.
is."
Yep.
That's John Henry Falk.
Ah,
John Henry Falk is a real hero of mine. That's
that's
why I
wonderful.
bring all this up. He was in a couple of movies, and I think he actually ran for Senate right before he died. But yeah, that's him. Such such a personality. I ended up in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't know. I listened to the commentary. They mentioned, yeah, that's John Henry Faulk, but they never mentioned why he's in this movie. So,
And you know what's funny? The next movie he was in was 2 years later. He played the governor in Leadbelly for Gordon
I've never
Parks.
heard of Lead Belly.
The Gordon Parks movie?
I've never heard of Lead. Have I seen Lead Belly?
Leadbelly's
No, I've never seen.
really good.
No, I've never seen Lead Belly.
Yeah, that.
But anyway,
If I can find it, that might be a February pick.
oh nice. Okay.
It's very, very good.
Hmm. But anyway, as they're going through all of this, and I noticed this the first time I went through this, and maybe you did too, is that sickening feeling of the environment that you're in that you can meet a friendly old man like that, the storyteller, but everything around you is telling you you shouldn't be here. And this idea of these kids have no idea. They're well, you're
Yeah.
young. When you're that young, you're not thinking about stuff. And I don't really even know what they're looking for.
They're
But I
because
think it was something about the graves were being dug up, and they were going to see if one of them was the grandfather, or something.
they were probably because if you'll recall in the early 70s in the South, there was a little bit of a push for that electrification that really came into its full with Jimmy Carter later in the decade. But they also did a lot of flooding of little towns and things to kind of have water reservoirs and stuff.
Which is what Deliverance was about.
Yeah. So it could be that, or that they were going to be selling that area and that they were going to be developing land on it. They actually dug up the graves as opposed to poltergeist. So maybe it had something to do
Just
with,
moving the headstones.
yeah, maybe it has something to do with that, or they were just there because that's where their grandfather had lived and they decided to just kind of reminisce. I don't really know.
And while
they
they're out
dragged
there,
people to their death just to like for no reason, really.
and they're out there to see. I don't know if it's one of the girls, the house she grew
Well,
up in.
Sally and Franklin had both been at that grandfather's house that they wound up in when they were
Okay.
kids. Like when she said 8 when she was 8, but they were talking about it, and that's how Franklin knew that there was that swimming hole that had dried up in the
Down there
area.
between them two sheds.
Yeah. That was no longer there, unfortunately.
They dried up.
Yeah.
But just everything from the beginning of this trip is telling them, don't go here.
Don't do this.
Don't go here.
Don't do this.
There are
Yeah.
dead things on the side of the road that are telling you you don't need to
Yeah.
be here.
The whole
Then the guy at the gas station tell him, well, you don't need to be going off over there. You really don't need to be going off over there. Something
he
like that.
tried to help them, sorta.
Yeah. You don't need to be going off
Maybe
over
you
there.
can explain this to me. So he actively says at the end numerous times that he takes no joy in killing, and that he gets upset when they're torturing the girl and she's screaming and everything.
Right.
Yet in the shot directly before he gets pissy with them, he's laughing and having a great time.
Yeah.
And then he stands there and he's like, "Don't worry, Grandpa's a great killer." And he stands there and he's hooping and hollering and being all happy and watching it while they're trying to bash her over the head. Yet at the same time, he gets up and leaves indignantly that they're taking their time with this. Like, I don't understand his motivation.
I'll tell
at all.
you the same thing I told you when we talked about The Shining a few years ago. Crazy people don't operate on
There
logic.
is that.
You just kind of have to go with that.
I mean, there is that.
Crazy people don't operate on logic. But the funny thing is, as they're going through, and to me, the front half of this movie, about the first 45 minutes, are the best part of the movie, because you're just getting nothing but atmosphere, and you're getting portents of things that are going to happen.
Right.
And when they're walking toward that house, And Kurt tells Pam, come look at this. And there's an enclosure with a lot of automobiles. Now, a yard full of automobiles in rural Texas is
No,
nothing.
I mean you and I, if we go through rural parts of our own areas, which are
Especially
very
Alabama.
disparate, Alabama and Wisconsin
hmm
has a lot of
Rusted out
I was going to say
automobiles.
garbage houses, but yeah,
hmm
um,
I was thinking of the front yard with all of the rusted out trucks and cars and
yeah,
things
there
like that. And
there are a lot of those here too.
but you and I both
Surprisingly.
know, watching the movie, we're sitting there going, we know where these cars came from
Hmm.
because of the proximity that they have to this house. And you're thinking, these are the people who came here and
Hmm.
never left.
Well, they did, just not in the same form.
If the cars don't tell them to leave, the molar should tell them they don't need
Yeah,
to be
there
here.
are more than one signal that, first of all,
There are more than 10 signals to
if
tell
you
them they don't
walk
need to be
up
here.
to a house, if you walk up to a house and there is stuff hanging that was deliberately hanging from a tree that are not glass bottles in like
hmm
some pretty fashion, it's
hmm
psychotic there and you need to leave.
And you're sitting on the porch and there's a human
Yep.
molar. There's a tooth on the porch. Now, there's a million reasons why there could be a tooth on the porch.
Again, it is rural Texas.
It is rural Texas, but still, just you
Yeah.
don't need to be there. And
No,
honestly,
and he walks in, the door opens and he goes like a stupid idiot. His death was probably the funniest,
yeah.
only because he just kind of walks in, he just kind of gets a little bit, he gets to the back door, Leatherface shows up, punk, and he's done. I was I thought I missed something, so I went back and I saw it again, and I'm like, nope, I didn't miss anything. That was just
I've
done.
never seen a death like this in a movie before
Yeah,
because
it
he
was
walks
very
in,
quick.
he walks in, there's a chicken in a bird cage, and he walks in and he stumbles. And when he stumbles, you see his point of view and he looks up and he sees Leatherface, and Leatherface has got the hammer, and he comes down and it's a
Yeah,
crack. There's this crack, and he falls and he starts
yeah,
rattling.
because his
The bone
yeah,
has
he's
gone
not
into the brain.
he's not totally dead, but
But I've
he's
never
still got
seen, you
signals going.
rarely in a movie like this see the rattle like that.
That was a very realistic portrayal of what would happen. You get hit in the head with a sledgehammer.
What's even scarier than that, because he pulls him inside and he pulls this metal door closed.
Yeah,
What's even scarier than that for me is what happens next. Because she is sitting outside on a porch swing, and she goes inside, or she's walking toward the house, and the camera's kind of following her, looking up, and you can see her bare back, and she's about to be, hung on there. And this is a movie that will tell you when you watch it through a second time, it'll, you start thinking about this stuff.
yeah.
And she walks in, and you see that door, and you're just like, don't go in there, don't go in there, don't go in there, don't go in there, don't go in there.
Opens it up,
Every
grabs her.
time somebody goes in this house, they see something different. They see more of it.
So here's the part
She
where
goes in and she falls into this
she
pile of bones.
falls, pile of bones and feathers, and I get how that would be nauseating and how you would probably be retching,
Mhm.
but she was so close to the ground. I'm like, you're breathing all of this in. Even if you
Yeah,
get out of here, you're screwed.
yeah.
Like, I don't know what this is, but it's probably going to give you some sort of a disorder.
I think this gives you a much more paranoid feeling about the atmosphere, the dirt, the germs, and all of that stuff in the
Yeah,
atmosphere now than it probably did then.
yeah,
Because of we're now in post COVID and we're thinking about that. You were talking about the knife and all of that stuff. We're all in mind of that. But she falls and it's like she looks up and there's a skull with a halo of feathers, and it's a
and it looks like a
chair made
big
out of
altar.
it's a
It looks like
chair
an
made out of
altar.
bones, and you're like, okay, this is not by accident. This is not animals came in here and just died. No, this is on purpose. And the nightmare fueled for this is that he sees her and she runs away and she almost gets away. That's the nightmare fuel. She gets out the front door and he grabs her
Yeah.
and he pulls her back in there. And then I think the thing that most people remember about this is the meat hook. Because he hangs her on the meat hook and we're looking at her for a minute.
Chainsaws going after people is very unsettling to me. It was more gruesome for me when we didn't see him taking off Kirk's head with the chainsaw, that he's just doing that. I immediately flashed to that scene early in Scarface, the De Palma version, in the bathroom when they do the chainsaw through the head. I almost threw up with that too. And I have a kind of a quibble. To call this a chainsaw massacre is playing up the presence of the chainsaw, which he only kills one person with. He only kills Franklin with it.
It's not really a massacre.
Yeah, it's not really a chainsaw massacre. It's a massacre because 4 people died.
Yeah.
But it's not a chainsaw massacre. When you hear chainsaw massacre, you expect people to be getting like limbs cut off when they're running away and all this kind of stuff. What you get is a lot of horrifying, terrible murder.
But that makes for a very bulky, very effective title. And the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is that's a title right there. But the scene that I really, really love, and the one that I really want to talk about, is after he kills the third guy who comes in, Jerry. He comes in, and that scream that he gives is kind of hilarious. Because he comes in, he finds Pam in the freezer.
Yeah.
He turns around, and Leatherface is there. And he screams, and Leatherface hits him on the head. And Leatherface freaks out. He goes to the window, and he's tearing the curtains off. And it's almost like, where are these people coming from?
See, the thought in my head was, that's the third one. I'm still doing the first one. This is gonna... I had to put her in the freezer. She's not even dead yet. This other guy came in. I'm so far behind. I'm still working on this first guy. What am I gonna do?
Well, I kept thinking, he hasn't seen people. He hasn't seen actual people. Outside of probably the hitchhiker and the guy at the gas station, probably hasn't seen people in years. And all of a sudden, here comes this guy.
Killing, so he does do some of the killing for all of this, but they just keep walking in. It's like, where are these people coming from?
Where are these people coming from? And he's freaking out. And he's looking out the window, and it's like, where are they coming from? And how many more are out there?
What am I supposed to do with them all?
What am I supposed to do with them all?
I don't have that kind of freezer space. It just felt like a logistical freak out to me.
Yeah.
I loved it because it just felt like he was just wit's end, overstimulated, just over processing everything. He's like, he feels like he's just overwhelmed by what is going on.
And he sits down, and they do this close-up of him where he's sitting there thinking about it.
It's one of the few times that you actually kind of feel a little sorry for the guy.
Yeah, it's like these guys are entering my domain. And it's like, where are these people coming from? And the weird thing is that after that, as annoying as Franklin is, you start worrying about these two because you start worrying about Sally and Franklin because they're waiting for people that are never going to come back, and they don't know that. They're waiting for these people to come back, and they're hollering for them, and they're going to go look for them, and they don't know where they are. You're out in the middle of nowhere in a van with no gas, and you're looking around, and your friends are nowhere to be found. You don't have cell phones. You don't have cell phones. You don't have any communication. They're just gone. She's trying as hard as she can to push him up the hill. And he's not a little guy. And she's trying as hard as she can to push him up the hill. And he's got this flashlight, and all of a sudden Leatherface just appears and just saws him up.
Very gratifying.
I
Really,
still,
really
I go
was.
back to what Toby Hooper was like. I don't know if he was I don't know if he was an intense method actor, or if he really was just a pain in the ass. Just, I have no idea.
Well, if that's what he was supposed to be portraying, then aces.
Yeah, it's a brilliant performance in my
Yeah,
book.
if that's what he was going for.
But we get in the back half of this movie, we get usually a chase scene lasts no more than 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, this goes on for at least
Yeah.
10. When he is chasing Sally through the weeds, the thought that I had when I was watching this the other night, how much gasoline does that chainsaw hold? Because he's got that thing running for at least 20 minutes
Yeah.
nonstop. And yeah, did he ever stop to refuel it? You know, but it
I mean,
becomes,
I would guess that at some point he probably refueled it like before she came
yeah,
because he
possibly.
obviously does use that in his work.
Yeah,
Which, that's kind of a terrifying thing to conceptualize is
right.
that's his work, but
Well, they're selling it. They're,
yeah.
they're turning it into barbecue that they sell down at the gas station.
Uh-huh. That for some reason Franklin insisted on chomping on like it was a cigar.
Hmm.
That was
Oh,
upsetting.
is that what
And
he was eating? Yeah, because you saw him earlier. He had something hanging out of his mouth that looked like a big cigar. I was like, what are
yeah,
you
that's a
eating?
piece of barbecue sausage or whatever that he gave him.
Ooh,
My guess, finger.
ooh.
But he's chomping on it like it's a cigar, and he's like Burgess Meredith in,
In Magic,
like,
that giant cigar.
just like he's eating a cigar, and but he never actually takes the bite out of it. And every time he takes it out of his mouth, he's spitting like it's gross.
Mhm.
Why does he keep putting it back in his mouth?
Yeah, why do you keep putting it back in your mouth?
Why?
But this
I
ending scene, I've got to talk about this because this is the first time I've ever seen this. This is a pure, nonstop nightmare. For about the last 20, 30 minutes of this movie are just a nonstop nightmare.
I have a
Because
question.
he's chasing her. Think about this. He's chasing her. And she always knows how close he is. Because she can hear that chainsaw. And she doesn't know where she's going. Because it's dark. And finally, somehow she gets
It's
twisted around and ends up back at the house. She goes upstairs and ends up going through a plate glass. Twice in this movie, she goes through a plate glass window.
yeah. So at the very end, uh, the the truck driver,
Hmm.
um,
Where did he go?
what happens to him? Because he runs off in the other direction away. So I don't understand this. Okay, first things first.
Hmm.
He runs in. He gets into the truck. He pulls her in.
Hmm.
They close the door. Leatherface is trying to get to the door, but it's not doing anything but chipping the paint.
It's not doing anything but making
I thought,
scratches.
oh, he didn't turn off the engine. They can just go and leave
Yeah.
Leatherface there, and everything's fine. And they go crawling out the other side to run away.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is this?
Yeah. What are you
You're like
doing?
you are serving yourself up.
Yeah.
The
What
guy
are you
he takes
doing?
a wrench and he like kind of waits and he throws it at him and it hits him in the head and it doesn't really do much.
Mm.
Um,
Oh, but that's
but then he's
after.
like gone.
Oh, but that's after that scene where, because she ends up inside that house, or she ends up running to that gas station. And I'm going back a little bit. She ends up inside that gas station, and that it's she thinks this kindly old man's going to help her.
Yeah, and then he comes
And he
back with a
says,
rope
"Well,
and a
I'll go. I'm going to go pull my pickup truck around." Now, there's a moment there, and this happened to me because you've heard for 20 minutes this buzzsaw. You hear a noise that you think for a second is the buzzsaw, and it ends up being the truck that comes around. This movie's playing with your head that way. You think he's one thing, he turns out to be another. He ties her up and stuffs her in this truck. Like almost, and I may be reading this wrong, but almost that guy is just like this morality is playing in his head. I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do this. But I don't
here's
want to
the
do this, but I'm
here's the
going to do
thing.
this.
I kind of thought that, but first he's like, "Oh, don't worry, everything's fine," and then he just starts jabbing at her with the stick,
Yeah.
maniacally, with a joy and glee in his face.
Almost like a split
They cut in
personality.
and out so fast that it's more like it's even too instantaneous for bipolar. It's probably some sort of schizophrenia
Yeah.
or like a very skewed, twisted mentality in general.
Yeah.
He is kind of a conundrous character because he keeps saying things that are the exact opposite of what he actually means.
Right.
He
Right.
doesn't add up.
No. But he gets her back to the house, and we find out that the hitchhiker is part of the family. And he starts beating the guy, telling him, "I told you to stay away from that graveyard." And we find out that he was the guy at the beginning
Mm-hmm.
who was digging the body up. And they take her inside, and I'm not going to pretend that I understand the end of this movie, but basically they're doing this thing where they want Grandpa to belt her over the head with his hammer. One last kill and all of this. And she gets away, and for the second time, she goes through a plate glass window. Now, here's the thing. Here's the important thing about this scene. All of it takes place from her point of view.
Yeah.
This movie is not playing to this exploitation mentality at that moment.
Right.
It's trying to show you. It's trying to put you in sympathy with her. That's apart from what most movies like this do.
Right.
Most of them are from the killer's point of view. This is from her point of view, and that's important because you want to feel the fear and the nausea and the confusion. And she's doing and saying every single thing she can to get out of this mess. And she gets out of it. She jumps out the window. She runs down the road.
While tied to a literal armchair.
Literal armchair, made out of
Because
arms.
there are 4 arms on the
Yeah.
armrest.
Which is the first thing she starts screaming about.
Yeah,
But she gets down that road, and the
I at least got
hitchhiker.
to give him points for being clever.
Yeah, but she gets down the road, and that hitchhiker grabs hold of her as she's in the road. And this is the scene that turned my stomach. Is that the hitchhiker gets smacked right in the face with this semi truck that then
right
runs
under it.
over
Yeah.
him. That was the scene that, everybody's got their nausea point in this movie. That's the one for me. Because
I was kind that was almost as satisfying as Franklin's death.
but I mean, you watch the wheels crush this guy.
Yeah, I know. It was really cool. I had a different viewpoint of it than you did, I guess.
But the guy in the semi truck, it's like they go out the other side, and the guy, he just runs off. He just disappears.
Why did he abandon his truck? Like, why did they do that? And then this other guy comes, she flags him down, literally cannot get into the truck, and you could see the actor having to slow down. I read something that
I heard this too.
apparently because she was such a slow runner, he could run faster than her, that they kept putting stuff in front of him. That's why he kept having to saw through like brush,
the weeds,
and tree branches.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, he stops to saw at the weeds. I'm gonna guess that's probably why he ends up tearing up the front door.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, there's no real reason for him to spend 5-10 minutes tearing up this door with a chainsaw, other than just to let her find an escape route while she's upstairs in the house somewhere. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but
yeah, and how he didn't, like, I don't know, catch her leg or arm or her back or all.
This movie, by the way, does not end with any major conclusion at all. It's like
Sally
Sally
gets away in the back seat of this truck, in the
back cab
of this truck,
back tread, yeah.
And
he does this little dance. Yeah, that's it.
His frustrated chainsaw dance.
The frustrated chainsaw dance. And that's it. That's the end of the movie.
Which who hasn't had that moment?
I mean, who doesn't feel that way some days,
You know.
By the way, I should also tell you a little backstory because I was listening to the commentary, hoping they would bring this up. This movie was financed by Bryanston. Do you know anything about Bryanston?
No.
Okay. Bryanston was owned by some guys who, well, they have two rules: never rat on your friends and always keep your mouth shut.
Ah, okay.
And it was financed by a guy, and I am not making this up, named Butchie Perino, which which when most
It's
people,
almost like people are born into it, you know?
which when some people on the set didn't get paid, they didn't complain about it. They didn't complain about it. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre has that connection. The same company financed this and also financed Deep
Oh.
Throat. So two very, very important films of their era.
Mm-hmm.
This and Deep Throat were financed by Bryanston, and a lot of people didn't get paid.
I've seen both of those movies.
I have too. And I had basically the same effect. I was like, okay, I saw it and I don't have to see it again.
Exactly. Exactly. The premise of Deep Throat is hilarious. I
It
don't
is.
really want
It
to
is.
go into it here, but it's hilarious.
And I hate to say it, but I'd rather watch this than watch Deep Throat because Deep Throat is boring as shit.
It is not well made. You know,
The premise is a woman has a clitoris in the back of her throat. And, yeah.
no, see, I was just going to leave that for people to look up.
Sorry.
Yeah, think about the joy of looking this up. What is this about? They said it was fun. Oh,
I love the tagline. How far will a woman go to untangle her tingle? Porn chic. You gotta love it.
but this movie really, well, it laid the groundwork for an entire subgenre of of movies that I hate.
Well, I'll tell you this. Let's put it in its context because this was 1974, and this was in the era of Night of the Living Dead and Last House on the Left and The Exorcist and all of those things. After the fall of the production code, when you had horror films that were just pushing the limits.
Well, see, this film in my mind led directly to The Hills Have Eyes.
A lot of
Things
imitators.
like that are just, to me, generally just distasteful, and I don't find any pleasure in watching any movies about that kind of thing. Like, if I don't find pleasure in it, I'm not gonna watch it. Even if it's like a horror movie, if I don't have any kind of fun with it, or if it doesn't teach me something, I'm not gonna enjoy it. And
You can look at this and say, well, at
yeah.
least I saw
I
it.
mean, things like, the Hills Have Eyes, and the early Wes Craven. Um, that was
70s
just
Wes Craven.
that was just gross. It was just gross. I mean, it didn't get less gross in the 80s, but
Pre-Elm Street Wes Craven. No, I'll say that.
was
I'll say
yeah.
pre-Swamp Thing.
Honestly, the vilification of the mentally unwell, that whole subgenre in 70s horror, is very upsetting to me. I just don't like it.
And I'll
It's it.
say this: I never saw, no pun intended, never saw the sequels. But I will say they added one thing that I love. They gave the family a last name, and I thought it was kind of brilliant. Their last name
Oh,
is Sawyer. I hope somebody got paid well for that. Just Sawyer. Yeah.
and didn't the third one give us Jennifer Aniston?
I have no idea.
I think
I
Jennifer Aniston was in the third one.
I think I
Oh no, she
maybe.
was in a Leprechaun movie. Somebody else was in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 though. That was became a big star.
Oh, and by the way, this was produced by Ron Bozeman, who produced the other film from Shock-Tober. He produced The Silence of the Lambs and won an Oscar for it. Tobe Hooper, by the way, this is the third film we've talked about that's directed by Tobe Hooper. Because our very first Shock-Tober pick was Poltergeist. And a few years ago
Well,
we talked about Life Force.
directed by Tony
Directed. It was a screen credit, okay. And the other was Life Force.
Oh, Life Force was awful.
Life Force was a movie you wanted to love. You really wanted to love it.
I did. I did, and
I
no part of it led me to actually having that feeling.
listen. I went back and I listened to our review of it, and at the end of it, if you just listen to the last 30 minutes of that episode, we are struggling to find a reason to love this movie. We want to love it so bad, but the movie is just not making it easy. Oh God.
Yeah, that was unfortunate.
It's just easier to hate on a movie or absolutely love it than a movie that's just it's so flawed that you're sitting there going, I want to say I like it, but I can't. I know because I'm going through that with Megalopolis. I'm sitting there going, I want to say I love it, but Coppola was just not making it easy. And I was just, yeah, yeah,
Coppola doesn't make liking his big swings easy.
yeah.
It's like, you know, The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2 were big swings, but not what you would find out Coppola would consider a big swing.
Consider
Like
anything.
the first time we get it was Apocalypse Now.
Hmm.
And that is masterpiece of a mess and a mess of a masterpiece.
Hmm.
But then you get One for the Heart and The Cotton Club. And
I can't think of a movie that he made in the 1980s that I actually liked.
Peggy Sue Got Married.
Yeah, that one I liked. That one was good.
That's the best one he did in the 80s.
That's the best one he did in the 80s. And it was so outside of his work.
Yeah. And Rumblefish, I'm still trying to piece together what in the hell that was.
The Rainmaker was actually really good.
Well, that was in the
That was in the 90s, yeah.
No,
That was
the
in the-
Rainmaker.
that was-
Oh, the John Grisham's The Rainmaker, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, his first film was called The Rain People, and that was in the mid late '60s.
Yeah.
Or it was his follow up to Finian's Rainbow, something like that. But he did The Rain People. Yes, John Grisham's The Rainmaker was in the late '90s. That wasn't a big swing. That was a I need money, and this is going to give it to me.
But it was really good.
It was good. Dracula was.
Dracula
kind
was
of
a really good-looking piece of junk.
I love the movie, but there are significant obvious flaws in it.
I'll say this. The difference between Dracula and Megalopolis is at least you know what Dracula is about. By the way, stay tuned because we are going to talk about Coppola in December because we got another 50th anniversary coming up, and that is The Godfather Part 2. We're going to talk about that during Christmas time. And I'm sorry we got away from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Well, it's the end of the episode.
What more can we say?
Not much. Other than what was the deal with the wig on Leatherface at the end that made him look like he was in Monty Python doing drag?
The way that the actor explained it was that he had nothing inside of him. So what he expressed with these different masks. And I thought, okay,
that I get, but I mean,
he's kind of the housewife
wig that
at
he
that
has
point.
on. The wig that he has on makes
Right.
him look like he's doing drag with Monty Python.
Mhm.
Like, you expect him to go, "Oh dear."
Monty Python's Texas
You know
Chainsaw
what?
Massacre.
I would pay money for that.
I would pay good money to see that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would drop some cash for that one.
Sorry we got off track.
That's yeah. So next week
It's
we're
your
gonna do
choice.
Blackula.
Yeah.
I had seen before.
Which I
but
just saw
when-
this morning.
Had you ever seen it before?
No, never seen it
Oh.
before.
So I had seen it once long ago, and I had totally forgotten that they literally call him Blackula at
Yeah.
the beginning of the movie. Like, I had totally forgotten that.
You can
I thought it was
tell
just a
in
clever
watching
name
that
for the
movie,
movie, but
watching that movie, you could tell there are two totally different movies that the producers wanted to make and that the actor wanted to make. Anyway, that's next time.
we'll get to that.
We'll
That
pick
one's
that
a lot of
apart.
fun.
We'll pick that
And
apart.
if I have time to watch it before we do it, I also will bring up Scream Blackula Scream, but that is a
Never seen
less.
that one.
Oh my! I don't think I've seen all. I think I saw the beginning of it. I don't think I saw all of it. It'll be interesting because he dies at the end of the first one, but
Yeah, I saw this movie for the first time this morning, and he does die at the end of the movie, and I'm thinking, isn't there a sequel?
yes.
I was like, what? Isn't there a sequel? There's a sequel. Okay,
Well,
and I
we'll
have
let
a
you know what
feeling
happens
it,
in the sequel.
and I have a feeling it will not.
It's not going to make sense, and that's fine.
I didn't imagine it
The
would.
first one doesn't. Anyway, so that's what we'll do then, and then we have an extra week in October this year. So
We're gonna talk about the eighth
you
wonder of the world.
you have chosen. I have been trying to get to King Kong
Mm,
since we started this podcast,
yeah.
and Godzilla, actually, for that matter. So I am grateful that you've chosen it, and thankful that I was able to pick
Godzilla.
mine. That I was finally able to talk about a true love of mine, which was Godzilla. So I think that's everything we
Our
have. That's
again,
what we have coming
our
up.
website and our Twitter and
Make
all of that, it's all gone. So email us. We're at podbaydoors@gmail.com.
Yes, the podbaydoors@gmail.com.
Please do.
You can also leave a comments down in the comment section down in here in YouTube. Hit the like, subscribe, and follow button so you know when we have a new episode. And just if you have any requests that you would like to hear us talk about, let us know. We might actually eventually get to it at some point. One has been requested, but it was maybe 7 years ago.
I was hoping we get a whole
We
bunch.
haven't done it yet. We'll make a better effort if you make any recommendations to us in the future. We thank you very much for listening, and the Pod Bay doors are now closed.
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.